Now a group of sleuths claims to have solved the case of the infamous Zodiac Killer.
In my mind. Okay, here we go. Mr. Allen, were you the Zodiac?
December 5th, 2020. Three men, a software developer in Virginia, a mathematician in Australia, a programmer in Belgium who had never met in person, submitted a solution to the FBI. They had just done something that the FBI itself, the NSA, and the United States Navy's own cryptographers had all failed to do across 51 years. They had cracked a code written by one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. The message it revealed was strange, taunting, and almost disappointing in its pettiness. But that's not the part of this story that should keep you up at night. The part that should keep you up at night is this. There are two more ciphers. They are shorter. They are, by every measure, simpler. And more than half a century later, nobody, not the FBI, not the NSA, not three of the best amateur codebreakers alive, has solved either one. Keep that in mind. We are going to come back to those two ciphers at the very end. This is the Zodiac Killer, the only major American serial killer who was never identified, never caught, and who chose, deliberately, to become a public character. He didn't hide his crimes. He advertised them. He sent letters to newspapers. He included pieces of his victims' bloodied clothing as proof. He created his own name, his own symbol, his own mythology, and then he simply stopped and vanished. Officially, he is linked to 5 murders and 2 survivors. He claimed, in his own letters, to have killed 37 people. Whichever number is true, the case remains, to this day, formally open. This is the story of how he operated, what his letters actually said, who investigators believe he might have been, and why, even with modern DNA technology and a cracked cipher, nobody has ever been able to put a name on him. December 20th, 1968, Lake Herman Road, on the outskirts of Vallejo, California. 17-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen had parked at a remote Lover's Lane spot, a popular, quiet place teenagers went on dates. They were on their first date together. Sometime that night, someone approached their car and shot both of them to death. The police were baffled. There was no apparent motive, no robbery, no sexual assault. Just 2 teenagers, dead, in a parked car, for no discernible reason. The case went unsolved and largely forgotten for about 6 months. Then, on the night of July 4th, 1969, less than 2 miles away, a married 22-year-old waitress named Darlene Farron and her 19-year-old companion, Michael Margot, were sitting in a parked car at Blue Rock Springs Park when another car pulled up beside them. The driver sat with his lights off for a while. Then he got out, walked up, and opened fire. Farron was killed. Margot survived, despite being shot multiple times, and was able to give police a partial description. Within an hour of the Blue Rock Springs shooting, the Vallejo Police Department received a phone call. A male voice, flat and unhurried, gave the dispatcher the exact location of the bodies, and then, almost as an afterthought, added something nobody had asked him. "I also killed those kids last year." Then he hung up. He had just connected openly and on the record 2 separate murders that police hadn't yet linked. That call is one of the strangest pieces of evidence in this entire case because of one detail investigators have spent decades arguing about. Was the caller's voice ever actually captured? We'll come back to that question because the answer matters more than you'd think. 4 weeks later, on August 1st, 1969, 3 Bay Area newspapers, the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner, each received a nearly identical handwritten letter in an envelope with no return address. The writer claimed responsibility for the Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs attacks. He proved it. He included details about the murders that had never been released to the public, the type of ammunition used, the exact number of shots fired, what Darlene Ferrin had been wearing. He demanded the letters be printed on the front page by Friday, August 1st, or he would, in his words, cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night. Each letter contained 1/3 of a coded message, a 408-symbol cipher made of strange geometric shapes and letters, which he claimed would reveal his identity. This was, as far as anyone can tell, the first time in American criminal history a serial killer had voluntarily handed police a code to crack, almost daring them to do it. Within 8 days, the first cipher, the 408, was cracked. Not by the FBI, not by the police, by a high school teacher named Donald Hardin and his wife Betty, working by hand at their kitchen table in Salinas, California. The decoded message was, by any measure, deeply disturbing. It read in part, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all.
I like killing because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all to kill."
The message also promised that his identity was hidden somewhere in the cipher's text. It wasn't. There was no name. It was instead a confession, a manifesto of pure motive, written by someone who clearly understood exactly how much attention this would generate. He was right. 8 days. A married couple at their kitchen table did what would take professionals 50 more years to do with the next one. And the killer, emboldened, not deterred by the attention, was about to escalate. His next attack would be the only one where survivors saw his face, his costume, and the strange symbol he wore stitched onto his chest. September 27, 1969, Lake Berryessa, Napa County. College students Brian Hartnell, 20, and Cecilia Shepard, 22, were having a picnic on an isolated stretch of shoreline when a man approached, wearing a black hood with a clip-on bib and a circle and cross symbol stitched onto his chest like a target. He claimed to be an escaped convict who needed their car and money. Then he produced a length of rope and tied them both up. Then he stabbed them, repeatedly, methodically. Hartnell 8 times, Shepard far worse. Before leaving, he walked to their car and wrote a message on the door in marker. A summary of his own crimes, dated, with the crosshair symbol. He then drove to a nearby gas station and called the Napa Police Department himself to report the crime, using a payphone that was later identified, with his own fingerprints still on it, though it could never be definitively matched to a known suspect. Hartnell survived. Cecilia Shepard died 2 days later. Remember the question about whether the original July 1969 phone call was ever recorded? Here's why that detail matters so much. The Napa police payphone call after Lake Berryessa, unlike the earlier Vallejo call, left physical evidence behind, a fingerprint at the scene. If a clear recording of his voice from the earlier call had existed and been preserved, investigators would have had 2 independent forms of physical evidence, voice and print, that could one day be matched against a living suspect using modern forensic audio analysis. As far as the public record shows, no verified audio recording of either call has ever survived or been released. One of the most basic, modern tools used to catch serial killers today, voice analysis, was simply never available in this case in any usable form. That's not a coincidence of bad luck. It's a symptom of how early in forensic history this case happened. October 11th, 1969, San Francisco. A 29-year-old taxi driver named Paul Stein picked up a fare in the Presidio Heights neighborhood. The passenger directed him several blocks past his stated destination, then shot him once in the head at close range. 3 teenagers in a nearby house witnessed a man wiping down the inside of the cab and walking away calmly into the night. They called police and gave a detailed description, the most complete eyewitness account of the Zodiac that has ever existed. Police, in one of the most consequential errors of the entire investigation, were initially given a flawed radio description of the suspect as black, when witnesses had actually described a white man, and a patrol car that passed the actual suspect walking nearby never stopped him. Before we get into the most famous unsolved cipher in American history, and the team of strangers who finally cracked part of it in 2020, I want to take 5 seconds. This case has more documented physical evidence, more genuine mystery, and more active forensic work happening right now than almost any other cold case in the country. If that's the kind of story you want more of, subscribing helps this channel keep covering them properly. 2 seconds. Now, the part of this case that turned an unsolved murder spree into a 50-year cryptography obsession. After killing Paul Stein, a piece of his blood-stained shirt arrived in the mail at the San Francisco Chronicle, attached to a letter that began, "This is the Zodiac speaking." It was the first time he used that name. He used it from then on. Over the next several years, he sent more than 20 letters and cards to newspapers and to a prominent defense attorney named Melvin Belli, each containing pieces of bloodied clothing, taunts, threats, including a threat to shoot children getting off a school bus, and, 3 more times, encoded ciphers, a 340-character cipher in November 1969, a 13-character cipher in April 1970 that began with the chilling words, "My name is," and a 32-character cipher in June 1970, sent alongside a hand-drawn map of Mount Diablo, which he claimed marked the location of a hidden bomb. By 1974, the letters had simply stopped. His final confirmed letter claimed a death toll of 37 victims, a number that almost no investigator believes is literal, but that nobody can definitively disprove either. And then, after years of escalating correspondence, taunts, threats, and codes, silence. Total, permanent silence. No more letters, no more calls, no confirmed murders attributed to him after October 1969. He simply went quiet and never spoke again. Here's the question that defines this case more than any other unsolved murder in American history. With this much physical evidence, a fingerprint, multiple eyewitnesses, handwriting samples, DNA recoverable from envelope seals and stamps, a partial cipher solution, why has nobody ever been definitively identified? The honest answer is not that there's a lack of suspects. It's the opposite. There have been dozens. The most cited name for decades was Arthur Lee Allen, a Vallejo schoolteacher, fired in 1968, later institutionalized for child molestation in 1975, who matched several witness descriptions and was personally investigated for years by lead detective Dave Toschi. Allen was searched, questioned repeatedly, and never charged. He died in 1992. DNA testing on envelope evidence in the 2000s reportedly failed to match him, though some investigators still dispute the conclusiveness of that testing, given how degraded the samples were. In 2021, a separate group of investigators, calling themselves the Case Breakers, publicly claimed a different man, Gary Francis Post, a house painter who died in 2018, was the Zodiac, citing witness statements and scars on Post's forehead matching composite sketches. The claim made international headlines. It has never been substantiated by DNA or accepted by official law enforcement, and many longtime case researchers consider the evidence presented thin. This is the recurring pattern of the entire Zodiac case, compelling circumstantial theories, repeatedly, for over 50 years, and not one of them has ever cleared the bar of an actual criminal charge. That's not because investigators haven't tried. It's because this case happened at the exact wrong moment in forensic history, just before DNA technology, just before digital fingerprint databases, just before any of the tools that have cracked similar decades-old cases in the 2000s and 2000s. And then, 51 years after it was mailed, something genuinely extraordinary happened. Not a DNA match, not a new suspect. A code finally broken by 3 men who had never set foot in the same room. David Oranchak, a software developer in Virginia, had been working on the 340 cipher since 2006. In 2019, he was joined by Sam Blake, an Australian mathematician, and Jarl van Eyck, a Belgian warehouse worker and self-taught programmer who had built custom code-breaking software called ASCII Decrypt. The 340 cipher used 63 different symbols, far more complex than the first cipher, with multiple symbols representing the same letter, deliberately designed to defeat the kind of statistical frequency analysis that had cracked the earlier code. Blake's breakthrough insight. Maybe the killer hadn't just substituted symbols for letters. Maybe he had also rearranged the entire structure of the message itself. Blake generated 650,000 different ways the cipher's symbols could theoretically be reordered. Van Eyck's software then tested all of them. One variation, run through a University of Melbourne supercomputer, produced fragments that weren't gibberish. Hope you are, trying to catch me, or the gas chamber. Oranchek said he jumped out of my chair because he recognized that last phrase. Weeks earlier, a caller to a Bay Area TV talk show called The Jim Dunbar Show had said on air, "I'm sick. I don't want to go to the gas chamber." The cipher's content matched a real documented historical event from exactly the right window of time. That was the confirmation they needed. On December 5, 2020, the three men submitted their solution to the FBI. It was validated. The decoded message read, in part, "I hope you are having lots of fun trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me." That was it. No name, no address, no confession of new crimes, just more taunting. 51 years of mystery, unlocked, to reveal a man congratulating himself for not getting caught. Oranchek admitted afterward he held almost hopeless expectations for the two remaining ciphers, both far shorter, which paradoxically makes them harder, not easier, to crack with statistical methods, since short messages don't provide enough data for the same techniques to work. At the start of this video, I told you to remember two ciphers, the ones that remain unsolved even after the 340 fell in 2020. Here they are. The Z1313 characters, sent in April 1970, beginning with the words, "My name is." If that cipher is ever broken, it could end this 50-year mystery in a single sentence. Some cryptologists have proposed solutions. One suggested it spells out Alfred E. Newman, the mascot of Mad Magazine, a likely taunt rather than a real name. Another suggested an insulting phrase aimed at a cryptography expert who had publicly challenged Zodiac. Neither solution has been broadly accepted as definitive, and the Z32 characters, sent with the Mount Diablo bomb map, remains completely unsolved as well. Both ciphers are short enough that thousands of possible word combinations remain statistically plausible, which is exactly why the same supercomputer methods that cracked the 340 have not worked on them. Oranchek's own assessment stands. Solving them may be almost hopeless. The Zodiac case remains, to this day, an open investigation for the FBI's San Francisco field office and for multiple California police departments. Modern forensic genealogy, the same technique that finally caught the Golden State Killer in 2018 after 40 years, has been applied to surviving Zodiac evidence, including envelope flaps and stamps that may contain the killer's saliva. As of the most recent public statements, no genealogical match has been publicly confirmed. Whether that's because the DNA has degraded beyond use, because no living relative has ever uploaded their own DNA to a public database, or because investigators are sitting on information they haven't released, nobody outside the investigation knows for certain. David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, Darlene Ferrin, Cecilia Shepard, Paul Stein, 4 confirmed murder victims, plus the unborn child Darlene Ferrin was carrying. 2 survivors who lived the rest of their lives with what they witnessed. A killer who wanted, more than almost anyone in the history of American crime, to be famous, and who got exactly what he wanted, while never once paying for what he did. If you know anything about this case, if you have information about the unsolved ciphers, about Arthur Lee Allen, about Gary Francis Post, about anyone, the FBI and multiple California police departments still maintain active tip lines for this case, more than half a century later. Subscribe if you want to keep following cases like this one, the ones where the mystery isn't over, and the truth might still be sitting in someone's attic, in an old letter, waiting for the right person to finally read it correctly.